All right. So, what what was the blog post? Do you mind sharing what it was?
Oh, yeah. So there was a kid who was planning on um, shooting up my son's high school. He was going to high. They went to the same high school in Edmond,
What?
and he
Jeez.
had a bunch of guns. He had a bunch of explosives, but he told some of his friends before he did it, and his friends, turned him in, and so he ended up going to jail. Actually, he went to a psychiatric place, I think. But so basically, the post was just a was an open letter to the kid, just thanking him for realizing he was out of control and reaching out for help for his friends and his friends helping him. So yeah, and it
Wow.
was, I mean, unfortunately, like, yeah, mass shootings aren't really a thing that's going away, but it was a particularly bad summer for it whenever that happened. So it yeah, yeah, it was all over the place.
That's crazy. Yeah, that makes perfect sense why it took off. That what a great story.
Yeah,
Jeez. Huh. So
yeah,
like they
I
stopped it from
yeah, and I've
happening
talked.
because they reached out to him.
Yeah, so he had a couple of buddies, I guess, and he
I lost you there. Oh, okay, no, he's dealing with something. He's out doing errands right now. What's up, Evil Mike? Oh well, I'll take this time to actually introduce what's going on here. This is a impromptu. Well, it was an organized thing, and then it turned into an impromptu meeting where we're just kind of hanging out, and we're going to be talking about We Promised Utopia. But we're starting off with a riveting story from Charles Martin regarding a blog post that generated millions of traffic, like millions of people of traffic, millions of hits, I guess is the right way to say it. And they went to his website for his bookstore, which is Literati Press, and it just invited like hackers and trolls to take down their website, and they had all this stuff based off of a blog post where somebody was going to basically organize a school shooting, and it was averted by just reaching out to him and talking, and it's I think that's a cool story, just focusing on like mental health and actually relating to people as like actual individuals and having it work out in the end is very lightning. So yeah, geez. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna be hanging out here, and yeah, as people trickle in.
Okay, I'm back.
Hey, welcome back.
I dropped Sky. Well, okay. Hang on just a second.
Okay. Oof.
There we go. Hey, you're in the stream twice.
Weird. Okay, let me.
I could just remove the other one. You're fine. There we go.
Remove the wrong one. Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. Charles keeps jumping in and out. And Adrian should be on his way. I'm not sure what happened to him, but we had that Google Meet. I got to do some research on that with hanging out and having a meeting. So we just jumped over to my YouTube channel. Quick introductions. We have Charles and Robert, who are writers of We Promise Utopia. And we have Charles in here again. The other Charles. There we go. All right, welcome back. And Charles was telling us a story. I'm sure you've heard it before, Robert, but it was about how the blog post got a bunch of traffic to his website, invited a bunch of trolls, hackers came in, took down the website, made havoc. But it was such a good post and such a genuine story. I thought it was really touching. So.
Sorry, having technical difficulties.
That's fine.
And a crazy amount of echo.
So are we echoing or are you echoing? This is like how every Zoom call has ever gone in my life. There's like 20 so minutes of diagnosing whether, can you hear me? Can you see me? What's going on? Like Charles has been in and out like 3 or 4 times. I still have him sitting right here too. I have Charles number 1 and Charles number 2. And I could just keep popping them in and out.
Yeah.
So what did you contribute to We Promise You Utopia?
So I'm kind of on the same wavelength as Adrian. We had conceived the idea on a drive down to South Texas to go on a work trip. And we were just sitting in the car and we were chit-chatting about, green energy and stuff like that, because we kind of see that this is the way of the future. And we just started tossing around some ideas about, it'd be kind of neat if there was like a Netflix documentary on, on like if you can get people to live within their means. Or live off of within their means off of other people from other countries. So like the idea would be someone from China would live like an American, and what would their lifestyle look like in China where they live, living like an American, or someone from America living like someone from Thailand. And so, and based off of what their carbon footprint is. And so we were just like, oh, that's kind of neat. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And then we just went down this rabbit hole for like 5 hours of talking about this idea on the trip. And when we got done with the trip, Adrian was just like, I'm going to go talk to someone about this. And I was like, hey, dude, go talk to someone. I'll support you. And he's like, okay. So a year later, he'd got in contact with Charles through a friend, and pitched the idea to Charles. And Charles, I mean, he can speak for himself, but he loved the idea. And so we so Adrian's like, well, just hang on, let me go get Robert. And so we all the 3 of us all put our heads together and we're like, this is pretty fun and this could be really cool. And then Charles was like, hey, I'm going to start writing the script for it. And I was like, really? And so he started writing the script. We started developing the characters, which was something Adrian and I couldn't do. It was actually really frustrating. We were like, wow, we have this awesome world idea, but I don't know how to write characters. I'm a scientist.
You're like, I'm a geologist. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly. So and so that's when Charles came in and put together these characters and their behaviors and how they work. And then basically we We just say, hey Charles, here are the bumpers.
Yeah.
Make sure the characters get to these within these bumpers to within these checkpoints, and this is going to be an awesome story. And so far, it's been working really great.
It's so freaking good. Like I don't know how else to put it. Like so just to give you a little insight of like how I even found you all. I through the pandemic, I do a bunch of things. I'm not sure if you heard me talking to Charles about what I do. I'm a licensed plumber. I'm a licensed wholesale automotive dealer. I take kink photography on the side. I do a lot of art stuff. I'm a writer as well. Like I'm writing a novel and a screenplay, and I'm working on my own comic. But it all kind of like translated with I just don't. I love random stuff, and I found you guys just sitting like there's a shop which I now work at. Oh, sorry, I have like 6 or 7 jobs. So I'm working at the comic shop now that I found your book at, but it's just sitting in like the small press independent section, and I'm like, this is freaking cool. And I started reading through it, and you guys split it into like, okay, first off, like it's really helpful the emblems, because there's 3 different stories being told in each issue, and they're from different perspectives. And what sold me was the last page, and by the last page I mean the ECC. So in the issue 1 we have the equivalent carbon credit and just breakdowns of like the different carbon footprints that everybody has, and then in the second issue we have the standardized CEASE. Standardized electrified interconnected SICE interconnected system, which is just about like travel. And like I love the science and the actual research behind it. Oh yeah, I'm also working on creating a solid state battery.
Cool.
Where and that would be more of like a conversation that I'd have with Adrian, I believe, because he's a energy engineer.
Yeah, he's the engineer and total geek when it comes to that stuff.
But I loved at the end, Charles is just paying homages to both of you, where it's like, hey, I got all these like super clever people and they have this amazing idea, and I'm just kind of sitting back seat and writing this thing. But I just love the actual thought that went into this. So what made you guys choose like comic? Like having a visual medium to tell this story, I guess is the way to say it.
Well,
we can hear you now, Charles. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in. Yeah. Can you mute everybody that has me on it? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. This is terrible. I'm sorry. Doing this on a phone is so hard. Am I echoing on your side? Okay, it's just on my side.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, here we go. The reason we did it as a comic book is this kind of idea is really, really dense. It can be a bit much to take in on like a novel or a movie, but a comic has a unique ability to communicate a lot of information in a really accessible way. And you also have the visuals. You can kind of jump between scenes and use a lot of the white space that exists in that form. So being able to get like a really meaty idea like we promised Utopia out in a way that's not just completely, I don't know, unaccessible. We really did think comics was going to be the way.
Yeah, that makes it very like, because you can tell the story and then also use the landscape of art and space to fill that with. I mean, you don't have to necessarily use words for it either. Like the art, oh man, the art freaking kills it. Okay, so it just made sense to tell it that way, because this doesn't exist. like this world does not exist, so you have to create it. And if you were just to describe it, it would be essays and a whole litany of unnecessary adjectives and describing what's going on. It just makes sense to have it as a visual medium as well.
And there's also stories.
We also were pretty fortunate that we had. Oh. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think one of the neat things you can do with comics and the images is we're in some instances we're actually telling stories within the story.
Yes,
which is really fun to do and not something you can really do in any other media. Maybe on film, but there are like hidden stories within here that there's a depth to this. And granted, you know, as the creators, Adrian, Charles, and I, we have like ideas that are this big, but then we have to say to ourselves, like, what can we actually show them?
yeah.
But then we sprinkle in little things here and there that say there's actually more depth to this than what we can actually tell you. So that's one of the hard things for me has been like, well, what do we cut out and how do we stay on track with telling the story that we're trying to tell? But we want to talk about all these other really cool things. Go ahead, Charles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The interesting fight that we always have pretty much with every single issue is just there's so much detail that Robert and Adrian have thought through, like what do trees look like in this future world? What does what explosives are available? And so especially with Jonathan and Chloe's pages is as we're getting art in, like every little thing is like, does this conform to this overall vision? And this is hard sci-fi, so it has to. Like we can't have we're hoping this is a comic that like people that are really, really into the science behind science fiction are going to really parse. So if we have dynamite in a time frame and in an environment where dynamite can't exist, somebody's going to call us out on it. So Adrian and Robert are being really diligent in making sure those little details all make sense. We fought for about 2 weeks on whether or not we could have an explosion. And I was like, guys, we have to have at least one explosion. Come on. So they finally relented.
And like for those who haven't read this book, like there's breakdowns of like energy coefficients and consumption and like the science behind the science fiction is what grabbed me. And it was very apparent that the research was done, the world has been built, and there's a grand story that you're trying to tell. So I totally agree with everything that you guys have been saying. It caught my eye, drew me in. I read, just to give a glimpse, I read 250 different comic series. And then I released a video of my top comic book series. And y'all made the list. And y'all were pretty high on the list too. So I narrowed it down to 30 comics. And if you know anything about me, I do kind of parody, comedy aspect, like media. And I basically pretended like I've never read your book. I put it up, and there's another book called You Promised Me Darkness, and yours is You Promised Utopia. And the way that I described your book was I was like, all right, next on the list, I think you guys were like number 12 or something like that. Number 12 is We Promised Utopia. It's kind of like this book over here, You Promised Me Darkness. If I were to choose between the two, I'd probably say Utopia is better than Darkness. So I'm going to put Utopia a little bit higher on the list. And that's like the... I obviously read all the books, but I was just...
However we got to do it. However we got to do it.
Yep. I just want to get you guys... I want to give you guys
the story about...
spotlight, so go for it. The story is...
The story behind... So... I know Robert talked a little bit about how they came up with the idea, but how I ended up getting looped into this was I'm in this arts district. We have a bookstore in an arts district in Oklahoma City called the Paseo, and we're in an abandoned swimming pool. We've got a little bookstore there. And Adrian had went across the street to one of our buddy artists and asked him to, he's just this fantastic artist. It's Planet Dorshock. He goes by Bombs Away, and Adrian's a big fan of him. And when he was like, "Hey, would you draw this comic for me?" and Dustin was just like, "No, but you should go across the street with my buddy Mike." And anyway, so Adrian wandered in, and And we get a lot of people, since we're a publisher, we get a lot of people pitch in various ideas to us. And especially writers, because writers don't really, they want to write a comic, but they don't really know what the next step is. And Adrian came in and he was like, I got this idea for a comic. And I was like, okay, do you have any writers or artists yet? And he was like, no. And I was like, all right. Well, tell me about the idea. And then Adrian told me the idea. And I was like, this actually is a really cool idea. I want to help you with this. Like, I usually will say no, 99% of the time, but this one just sounded so interesting. I was like, yeah, this sounds great. Okay, well, the world is really cool. Who are the characters in this world? And Adrian's like, oh, there's no. That would be what you do. I was like, cool. Challenging.
There's no characters.
No characters. Fully fleshed out world with everything except for the actual people. And then so whenever we started thinking about, when we started going in, we had a lot of writer sessions trying to figure out, like, how do you take this really brainy, flushed out, deep sci-fi world, and then how do you make it entertaining? And what kind of characters are going to really fit this? And over time, talking about it, they had the visionary Isabel already kind of in mind. So that character was in place, and everything else was what we had to create. And ultimately, like, the reason we had 3 different artists was part of that whole approach. We wanted to tell, kind of the, I don't know, like Aaron Sorkin, modern day building of this idea that's going to become the Utopia. And then this really lush, idealized world. And then this dreary, desperate dystopia that's in the future. So we wanted to have 3 artists that could really nail that. The hardest one of it, even though there's so much glitz and glamour that comes to the Utopia side, and Jonathan Kelch does an amazing job on it. The hard one was going to be the dystopia, because how do you get reader buy-in on characters that are suffering through this? How do you make it not drag the rest of the story? So we ended up not going with a comic book artist for that one. We went with a storybook artist because we wanted really soft, immediately knowable characters, even though there's minimal dialogue in those pages. So Chloe was the one who took on that challenge, and she's just absolutely crushing it.
That's crazy. Okay, so like I need to reiterate. So we have 3 different worlds, 3 different artists, 3 different stories, all taking place. We have a utopian society. We have the dystopian society, like I showed first. And then what's the can you explain the emblems? Because at the top, the art styles, like, technically I don't even think you need the emblems, but they really help for being like a reader, because the art styles do differ and they're completely telling different stories. Which portion is this? Because to me, it's like they're like the rebels. They're like the revolutionist, basically. Because the Utopia is obvious, the snowy kind of hellscape, but then there's also like there's hurricanes happening and like massive like geological changes and weather changes happening in the one that's more based in like the red tent. What is that one called? Because I'm not sure.
You want me to take it, Charles?
Robert, do you want to take that?
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah, so the 3 different timelines, like you said, you've talked about the dystopian one, which is the last one that Chloe's doing. Jonathan's doing the future one, which is the utopian society that's built off of what Isabel is doing modern day. So we're actually trying to do Isabel's timeline near modern day. I'm not going to say it's like right now, but it's within like several tens of years.
Yeah, we're close. It's not like weather is intense. Like weather is picking up. So
yeah, I actually read an article the other day that it was like 2 days ago. It was just like, we should expect stronger storms to travel much further than they ever have in the past.
Absolutely.
Referring to hurricanes and things like that. So we should expect weather phenomenon as our climate starts to change, which it is. And that's really the what we're trying to what Isabel and her timeline's trying to do is she's trying to establish through like media outlet and this television show of how there can be a better way for us to transition to a more greener community. And one of the things that she proposes, the way that we change it, is they say, hey, you know what? We need to start changing what we value. Instead of valuing our time, we need to value our planet. And so that's what the ECC is built off of. The ECC is built off of the idea that we put value into the planet, and not necessarily how we traditionally do it. We do something, we get paid for it. It's like, no, you do something, and what's its impact on the earth, and we'll pay you for that. So that's and so she's trying to build that up. And when Adrian and I talked about that initially, we were like, how crazy will it be if we were actually got to see where that happened, the type of innovation that would take place that is completely different than you're seeing modern day. Modern day, it's all about how can I do stuff faster, cheaper, and have more money in the end. Well, now you have a current, like how do I get the green? Now it's built on the idea of like, well, how do I actually protect the earth? How do I actually remove carbon? Because that's what I'm being compensated for. And just think about the type of industries that evolve from that, completely different than what we have now. And that's what makes it exciting. As you change that gear to being something, you value something different than you're valuing now, and things change. And I think that was probably the part where I got really excited when we were talking about this, is when we were like, well, what would that look like? And then that's when, and I got to give props to Jonathan, because we basically gave him a shell. We're like, this should look pretty. This should look awesome. And he just went with it. And we were just, I was shocked when he came back with the first images. I was like, how'd you know that was in my head?
Right?
We do.
Go.
We do have an art director, Eric. John Eric Osborne is the art director. He's the one who also does the present day, and he did have some sketches. You know, when we mocked out some of the major equipment, like the ride transport and things like that. But then we gave all this basis, the kind of the base idea to Jonathan. Man, he drew the shit out of those pages. And every page he comes back with is just amazing. But that guy's a beast. So we weren't
absolutely.
I wasn't. I'd seen his work, so I kind of knew what to expect. But like, I don't know, it's just amazing. Like, I put these pages against any other pages drawn this year by any other comic book artist out there. I think he's just doing a phenomenal work. Also of note, going back to the symbols, if you take a look at Mangus's jacket. One of the symbols is a little thing on his lapel. It's a little lapel pin.
Yep.
There are aspects of those symbols that are going to become, that will be flushed out a little bit more as we get further on in the story. But the symbols were created by Eric. He was the one who came up with that kind of idea of using the symbols as markers to make it even more abundant that we're changing time periods. But there's a lot.
So it's smart and so easy to read, even though it's 3 stories. No,
everything else in the story. There was a lot of thought that Robert and Adrian put into that. And that's kind of one of the fun things about doing this. We have 7 people working on this book, which is the biggest cast we've ever used for anything we've ever created, and every time there's a new opportunity come up, we got to think something through. It's the best collaboration I've ever been a part of, because everybody really respects the talents everybody's bringing to the table. We all have an idea of where we fit within the framework, but also there's a freedom to dissent, which is really, really important. So it's a hard comic because there's so many moving pieces, but it's a really, really fun comic too.
Yeah, you even touched on it in the back of issue 2. You're like, 3 months is a short amount of time, and you're going from November to issue 3 coming out in February, correct? Oh, sorry, he has to keep jumping in and out. I understand that, that's I shouldn't have asked a question that fast. But yeah, so basically the third issue comes out in February, if you want to touch on it. Yeah. Cool.
So the third issue comes out in February. Then the 4th issue comes out in, I think, June. I think June's right.
Okay.
And then we're going to, that's the first season. We're going to take a little bit of a break and let the artists catch up. We really want to get to, every other month. Monthly would be a dream, but we just, man, this is a hard comic. This is a really, really challenging comic.
It's so dense.
And so it's
like
we're going as fast as we can. I promise you.
Oh no, I love the pace that you're going at. Tell a story, tell it well, take as much time as you need. Honestly, the fans will be there, and the fans will wait. There's so much content out there. If you were to rush anything, it would be instantly noticed as like, hey, that seems kind of rushed. They kind of gave up at the end, or they're trying to meet a deadline. Stick to your wits. If you have to delay, it's part of where we're at. I have to tell everybody, oh, I'm like a random excuse generator where I go, oh, well, there's like a paper shortage. Oh, there's like a factory fire. Oh, there was a supply ships are stuck outside of the harbors, and somebody got hacked. And it's just ridiculous how much goes into it. And you're working with 7 different moving parts, 3 writers, 3 creators, letterer. It's a really well put together comic. We promised Utopia. If you haven't heard about it, go pick it up. It's just so flushed out, and you could tell that there's more that you want to tell, and it's immersive. I just don't know how else to say it. It caught me off guard, put me on my butt, and made me excited to read each issue because it respected science. It focused on art, storytelling, great writing. It's the whole package. And it's as independent as it gets because it's a bookstore putting it out in Oklahoma City that's operating apparently out of an abandoned swimming pool. So I just couldn't. And you have a geologist, you have an engineer, you have artists, and it's really well done. So were you involved, Robert, in the design of kind of like the landscapes and the kind of setting the scenes of what's going on? Because we were talking about weather, they had to add another category for hurricanes because hurricanes are getting stronger. They had to add another category for tornadoes because the wind speeds are getting past what they actually thought. So you want to touch on any of those?
Yeah. So in Isabel's time, they are beginning to see how the environment's changing. And this is actually, well, I'm trying to decide where to go with this because there's still things that we're writing. Yeah.
Yep.
That's Isabel.
Sorry, just saying Isabel. There you go for everybody who's watching.
And that's really well drawn. We had a couple of options for issues to cover, and this is the one that I really liked that came out for sure.
Cool.
So one of the problems that we have is that the landscape that we're trying to portray in the modern time is pretty difficult to do because a lot of things people are observing on TV. So
okay, yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like,
well, the monitors in the back. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, sometimes you just see an event on TV and you're like, well, that's not happening here. Like the wildfires that we had on Australia several years ago, it doesn't really hit home for you
unless you're there. Yeah, it doesn't affect you personally.
So like in the Caribbean, they're used to hurricanes, but when does it actually start to matter to the person? That when they're actually being impacted by this, the people who are making the really big decisions need to actually be experiencing some of these things. And so that's actually what landscape we're trying to create is an environment where these things are possible. Like hurricanes up in Great Britain, Northern Europe, hurricanes traveling really far, because until it hits home to some of the large world leaders, it's not really going to make you want to change. And that's actually something
we're a selfish culture, so we only focus on what's affecting us. So people that live in the Midwest, they have to focus on tornadoes, East Coast hurricanes, West Coast earthquakes, and that's just the United States. So
it's really hard to have people move to change until they actually experience something different. So we have to create a landscape in this modern time that shows how things are changing in a way that's scientific, right? like that's convincing to say, holy crap, we do need to change this. Because right now you hear all the green initiatives coming out. They're like, oh, we need to do this, or we're going to be screwed in 10 years if we don't do this. And like you see all these oil and gas companies, because they're like, BP is like, we're spending $500 million on trying on clean energy. Yeah.
Yep.
And so they see it, but they're also seeing it from like a competitive advantage position, right? They're seeing the value of trying to go that direction.
Saudi Arabia took all their money and built infrastructure and great universities. Like, they don't even have people from their country going to it. They took their money from oil, realizing that it's not going to last because there will be an inevitable shift, and the oil companies are now focusing on more green energy. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, no, they're definitely so they kind of see that, but that's from a monetary standpoint. That's not necessarily from a standpoint of like, we're trying to change people's mindset of stuff.
It doesn't have a humble origin. It's well, we need to get ahead of the game so we can make more money in the future. So
yeah, and there's no that's business, right? And that's the business that we've created nowadays, right? So I'm okay with that. But the point is that it still doesn't quite hit home to like the everyday consumer.
Nope.
Because they're not having those types of perspectives. And that's actually something that's really unique about this comic book, is that we're trying to span a very lengthy time frame. I can't remember if we say how far in the future Mangus is. I thought we dropped a line that said that. Let me just check real quick.
Don't you have your little hand-drawn timeline handy? Roll that thing out.
Oh yeah, I should. That thing has been through a lot. Yeah, I should go find that again. I don't have it handy. But the point is that until it hits home to the everyday consumer, that has to happen. And so we're trying to create a landscape that can provide that. And we think the hurricane is just like a first introduction. But there'll be other things like warming seas are going to destroy coral reefs and stuff like that. And you know, if you ever see like the Norwegian fjords inundated with algae,
that's true.
Because as that warms, it's just going to be an algae bloom, and it's going to be awful, and people are going to be like, this is gross. Until it hits home, I don't think people will quite understand it, and it needs to happen somewhat globally.
Yep. Until the trash ends up washing up on your own shore, you're not going to pay attention to it. So
yeah. Or Disneyland, Disney World goes underwater because of a rising sea level, you know?
Right. Yep. Go ahead, Charles.
The thing that I think makes this comic unique, you know, there's definitely eco-fiction is a huge part of the market. It's growing really, really rapidly because you know, people are really starting to get nervous. But I think the thing about this comic that it does make it different is it also asks the question, like, what could be accomplished if we could get enough people like bought in on a vision for not only like slowing down climate change, but also weathering it, and then getting to the point where we're basically geoengineering our own planet. Like, what happens if you can hold together a community of believers long enough to do something that grand? What could the world look like? And then what happens when that unity starts to fracture? And the stakes are definitely there. You know, we're clear-eyed. We're not just, you know, Pollyanna idealists, but also, like, you know, it is possible. It is possible for a movement to be able to create an ideal balance between technology and the environment. That could happen, and the economy. Like, that could happen. We've already thought it through. This is what it would look like, and this is the world that we potentially could achieve if we're willing to go all in. And a lot of like how they got there, the steps that got there, will be flushed out in the future future issues, and a lot of that you'll get a lot of those answers by the time we get through issue 8, which is the current arc. I just think that's interesting. Like, it's optimistic, not about the individual ability to change the future, but us as a community. Like, it's not just like one Bruce Willis who manages to turn around climate change on his own, but it's like, you know, we're humans. The thing that got us to this point isn't individual ability. It's our ability to come together as a giant herd and do something amazing. So this is what we think potentially we could, as a giant herd, do.
Jeez, that was really well spoken. Holy crap. So like what I want to say is like this is an alternative future. We can, but it's achievable. It's thought out. It's flushed out. Like my friend Ignacio was in here. He said that seems like your kind of people, they took 2 weeks to figure out if they can have an explosion in the comic book. It really, like, the commitment creates verisimilitude is the word, which is believability. And it's just so apparent when you pick up this comic and start reading it that it's rational, it's thought out, it's methodical. Like, if you're telling me that I'm getting 8 issues of this, I'm ecstatic. You're going to take a small break after 4, no problem. Like I said, take as much time as you need. This story is very, like, I'm going to be screaming it to as far as my voice can reach, as far as my kind of, I don't know. The comic community is very small, but at the same time, it influences a lot of things, because the next step is like different medias, like the film. Oh yeah, sorry, I've been an actor since I was 10. I'm actually using my channel to kind of refine my acting, like kind of make a reel or so to show the kind of different transitions. And like, I'll just be fully honest right now. I love, this is just for me. Everybody, I put on a face and it's all like kind of a comedic background. The start of this video is so on brand for my channel. We spent 15 minutes trying to sort out like what's going on. And Charles was in here 3 times. This interview was supposed to be with Adrian. He was the one that set it up and put it together. I am interviewing Charles and Robert, and it's just so on point. And I want to just take a step back and say thank you very much for both of you showing up and making this happen, because your comic book is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and you're doing great work. So keep it up. Oh, and you also do Blackjack Demon, which is another good comic. So, but I want to focus on We Promise Utopia, which is just so, it's so. I love the science. Go science.
Yeah.
What's up?
I'm about to have to pop off. But I wanted to say just a quick thing. Thank you so much for giving us a platform. Like, this is a hard comic to sell, and can't do it without, people on the ground willing to help us amplify the signal. Adrian, who should have been here, he's very functional. So I'm assuming he's probably dead, which is the only reason he wouldn't be in this interview. But he's really kind of the leader of this whole team, and he's done a fantastic job of keeping this really difficult project moving forward. We also, as one of the moves towards kind of sustainability, not just environmentally speaking, but as a publishing company, we actually started our own in-plant printing operation. So we absolutely have to finish printing all 8 comics, because we just bought a really expensive printer to make sure that we can. So we will definitely be hitting that timeline of getting through the fun. We're not going to be one of those comics that's like 3 issues in and then never hear from us again. Like, we're finishing the story come hell or high water. But thank you so much.
Then, I'll have you guys print my comic too. So it'll be a 3-issue miniseries. So 3 and done.
Awesome.
We could put use to your printer that you've invested money into.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was really great talking to you. Thank you again so much. Hey, Robert, I'll see you again very soon. You guys have a
See ya. So I have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll get out of here, Robert. Thank you very much for your time, by the way.
Yeah. No
honestly, that would be really cool. Like, if I could, the quality that you guys have on this, I would. Like, if I'm gonna message Charles after and be like, hey, so tell me a price, man, because I'm looking for a printer, because it's expensive. It's expensive.
Yeah, I'm not really on that side of the coin. I have a full-time job, right? So this is, it's been pretty hard for me to be involved with all the nuts and bolts of this. I like touch and go. They're like telling me certain things, like, oh, wow, that's crazy. That's interesting. And I'm pretty sure a lot of these, we just got the printer. So these particular issues were not printed by our printer. So
Oh no. Okay. Well, we'll see what issue 3 looks like then.
but they did put some out that we did. I did go to a meeting the other day where they had some examples of how the printer performs, and it's just as good. It's awesome.
Okay,
So
then yeah, we're fine.
I don't
The
think it was
quality is
ordered.
amazing, and there's kind of some companies out there. I won't say names, but Marvel Comics, and they have just terrible printer quality. Oh, Dark Horse Comics, they just like really like. I don't know. I understand, and kind of touched upon this. Is like about the money, and it's about like you'll have meetings where you're sitting in a room, and it's like, how can we save a penny? On like screws. Maybe we can use shorter screws or like a lighter metal, and you deal in mass quantities, and it's about saving the money.
Well, initially with this comic, it was going to be that we weren't going to do color. So imagine the comic book without color. It wasn't going to be black and white. We were going to do like colored themes. So we were only going to use red for and you can kind of see some of that like in Isabel's timeline. Most of it's red.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then Jonathan came and he's like, I'm just going to try coloring some of these. And he colored it and we're like, crap, we have to do this in color. That's too awesome. So
I don't think I could see the Utopia. First off, here's all the reds. Very, very red based, which totally works. And it evokes a lot of emotion with like, they're like the campaign that's trying to solve this. They're more or less a little bit in the future when it starts taking over. But I just, there's one page that I want to show where I can't imagine something like this page without color. Like, look at all the freaking color that's going on there in the futuristic aspect. Like, seeing that not in color would be, I don't know. I can't imagine it because I saw it first in color. So
yeah, well, that's an example of trying to save money on certain things, and but then it became clear as we were getting into this that we couldn't that was not possible. And as the story was coming together, we're like, yeah, we need to definitely go this way. Even in the third timeline in the dystopia, you can see how there's a color theme to it: the grays, the whites, the blues. Yep. So we were going that way initially, but we kind of turned a bit from that because we really were liking how this was coming out in color. But each timeline does have a color theme to it, like silvers and greens, and the Utopian are kind of like the staple. So
there's tons of silver. Green everywhere, and then the blues and the off grays in the dystopia. Yep.
Exactly. And so we were actually trying to go for that because those colors create a mood. And I'm not an expert at that, right? I just knew that, man, green and silver is kind of like happy, dark color is dismal, and kind of like anxiety, red, like we were trying to,
danger, brooding, dark. Got it. Yep. Yeah. You're trying to move to making the colors add to the story with, and it does. It totally works. I want to, so this is most likely going to be the last question. What did you personally, Robert, contribute like scientifically to this? Are you responsible for this carbon sheet at the back of issue 1?
I don't think you can separate Adrian and I on this at all.
Okay. So so it's you and Adrian. Okay, fair enough.
On the sciencey part, it's definitely Adrian and I. We were so coupled with how we developed the idea that I don't think I could say who came up with the idea first. And it's been several years. I can't remember who said like, That's fine. We should think about ECC. But in terms of writing it, Adrian did do the first draft on the end of the first one. And he did a bang up job. I just went in with some edits on the pods on size. I wrote that, and Adrian and I went back and forth, and we actually got some really great input from the artists as well. They cool. had some things to say too. I was like, man, I didn't hear about that. That's awesome. So we added that in there. There's also other fun elements within there. Like I look at seismic data. So size and seismic are kind of interchangeable. So there's like little nuggets for sciencey people in there.
There's more than just a little nuggets. Every time it says confidential, you're getting a lot of sciencey nuggets in it. And man, Like, okay, so it
The-
literally goes into energy storage, cost, automation, the proposal, and this is just for the transportation system that's in the book. Like, what?
Yeah, and it was actually kind of funny when we first started. We were like, we want these in the back, and we were talking with Charles about it, and we were like, we need to get our white paper done. He's like, what the heck is a white paper? And I was like, well, it's like a 1-page trying to convey an idea pretty quick. And so we wrote these white papers with the idea of we're not going to say everything about it, but we're going to say enough to like a proposal. Like these are all proposals of what they should do in the future. And these white papers or these are actually going to Isabel. So as you can see on the cover thing, it's like these are prepared for Isabel Bari. So they are being developed in our current timeline to say this is how this should kind of look in the future, and then you see the realization of how they were able to implement that. Now it won't always be exactly word for what they say, but it's going to be going in the directions of how they suggest. So that's fun.
That's freaking cool. I just this comic book is so thought out, and I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I guess we just end with the quote that's in the front of the book, dedicated to those who are willing to risk everything to save the world. Like that's I think that's as good of a place as to leave off. So everybody go pick up We Promised Utopia. I don't know how else to say it. Other than just commanding you to go do it. Like it's so good. And it's fantastic. It's great. Whatever adjective you want to use, but go pick it up. It's amazing. Join me on the journey of what these gentlemen put together and ladies and gentlemen put together. And yeah, I think that's about it. So let's end it there. And